The rain hammered against our kitchen window like an impatient debt collector. I stood there at 5:47 a.m., coffee mug in hand, watching Sienna drag her wheeled suitcase through the front door. She was supposed to be returning from Seattle tomorrow evening. Her business trip had apparently ended 12 hours early. "Flight got moved up," she said without looking at me. Her voice carried that particular flatness I'd grown to recognize over the past 6 months. The same tone she used when discussing mortgage payments or her mother's health problems. "I'm Elliot Mercer, 42 years old, senior IT specialist at Pacific Logistics. I fix computers for a living, which means I notice patterns, inconsistencies. The way data doesn't always line up the way people claim it should." "How was the conference?" I asked, setting my mug on the granite counter we'd spent 3 months picking out together. "Productive." She pulled her phone from her purse, fingers already dancing across the screen. "I need to shower. Long flight." The phone buzzed twice in quick succession. She glanced at it, and for just a moment her expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but something warmer than the ice she'd been serving me lately. "Important client?" I asked. "Always is." She headed toward the stairs, then stopped. "Elliot, we need to talk when I get back down." Those 7 words landed in my stomach like concrete. In 18 years of marriage, conversations that started with, "we need to talk," never ended with good news. The last time she'd used that phrase, we'd ended up in couples therapy for 8 months. I waited until I heard the bathroom door close upstairs, then I moved toward her purse. Call it professional curiosity. Call it the instinct of a man who'd spent 2 decades troubleshooting problems that people swore didn't exist. Her phone sat on top, still buzzing with notifications. The lock screen showed 3 missed messages from someone named Derek. The preview text was cut off, but I could see enough. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was..." The shower started running upstairs. I picked up the phone. Face ID didn't work, but Sienna had never been creative with passwords. Our anniversary date got me in on the second try. The messages from Derek Vaughn filled the screen. 6 months of them, hotel addresses, restaurant reservations, photos I definitely shouldn't be seeing of my wife in lingerie I'd never seen before. The bathroom door opened upstairs. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked to the coffee maker. My hands were steady, which surprised me. Maybe shock had its benefits. Sienna came down 20 minutes later, hair still damp, wearing the black dress she saved for important meetings. She sat across from me at our kitchen table and folded her hands like she was about to deliver a quarterly report. "I want a divorce," she said, completely flat. No emotion, no explanation, no preamble. Just 5 words delivered like she was ordering coffee. I looked at her for a long moment. Really looked. When had her eyes become so cold? When had she started holding her mouth like she was perpetually disappointed? "Any particular reason?" I asked. "We've grown apart. We want different things. The usual." The usual. I repeated her words, tasting them. "Nothing to do with Derek Vaughn?" Her composure cracked for exactly 2 seconds. A micro-expression that confirmed everything I'd seen on her phone. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on the table between us. The gold band made a small clicking sound against the wood. "But let's skip the part where you lie and I pretend to believe you." She stared at the ring like it was a spider that might suddenly move. "I regret every day I spent with you," she said, completely flat again. Matter of fact, like she was reading from a script. I stood up, picked up my ring, and walked toward the front door. My truck keys hung on the hook by the garage entrance, right where I'd left them every single day for the past 5 years. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "Back to bachelor life," I said, without turning around. I drove to my sister Fiona's apartment complex and sat in the parking lot for an hour, engine running, heat on full blast. The rain kept coming down, turning the world into a gray watercolor painting. At 9:47 p.m., I posted a photo on Instagram, just my left hand, ring finger bare, with the caption, "Back to Bachelor Life." I tagged it with our neighborhood and hit share. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I recognized but hadn't heard from in months. Lyra Ventrix, Sienna's best friend since college, the woman who'd been maid of honor at our wedding. "We need to talk. Not about what you think." I met Lyra at the Lantern Room, a downtown bar that tried too hard to be sophisticated. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a martini and a manila envelope. Lyra had always been the prettier of Sienna's friends. Tall, blonde, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. She'd been married to a software engineer named Paul for about as long as Sienna and I had been together, though I hadn't seen Paul at any social gatherings in the past year. "You look like hell," she said, as I slid into the booth across from her. "Thanks. You look great. How's Paul?" "Paul moved out 6 months ago. Turns out he was having an affair with his yoga instructor." She took a sip of her martini. "Seems to be going around." The waitress came by. I ordered a beer and waited for Lyra to explain why we were here. "I saw your Instagram post," she said. "Figured it was time to come clean about some things." "Such as?" She pushed the manila envelope across the table. "Such as the fact that I've been helping your wife cheat on you for the past 18 months. I stared at the envelope, but didn't touch it. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Sienna promised me something, and then she decided to screw me over too." Lyra's voice carried a bitterness that made her sound older than her 38 years. "Turns out loyalty doesn't mean much to her when it becomes inconvenient." I opened the envelope. Inside were printouts of text messages, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and photographs. Lots of photographs. Sienna and a man I didn't recognize, clearly taken over many months in various locations. "Derek Vaughn," Lyra said, watching me flip through the evidence. "He's a lawyer at Sienna's firm, handles corporate contracts, drives a Tesla, thinks he's God's gift to women." The receipts were damning. Every Tuesday night for the past year and a half, Sienna had told me she was going to book club. Every Tuesday night, according to these receipts, she'd been at hotels with Derek. "You organized all this?" I asked. "Hotel reservations, restaurant bookings, alibi coordination. I even handled the cash withdrawals when they wanted to keep things off credit cards." Lyra finished her martini. "I was good at it. Very thorough." "Why?" "Because Sienna was my best friend, and she said she was miserable. She said you were controlling and emotionally distant. She said she just needed time to figure out how to leave properly." I looked up from the photos. "And you believed her?" "For a while. Until I realized she wasn't planning to leave you at all. She was planning to have her cake and eat it too. Keep the house, keep the financial security, keep Derek on the side." Lyra signaled the waitress for another drink. "Then Paul found out about my involvement and used it in our divorce, said I was an unfit influence on our daughter." The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't like. "What did Sienna promise you?" "That when she finally left you, I could move into your guest house. Start over. Bring my daughter somewhere stable." Lyra's laugh was bitter. "Turns out she never planned to leave. She planned to make you leave." "What do you mean? Check your joint accounts lately?" I hadn't. Sienna handled most of our finances. She was better with numbers, she said, more organized. I pulled out my phone and logged into our bank app. Our checking account, which had contained nearly $40,000 last month, now showed a balance of $837. "She's been moving money for months," Lyra said. "Small amounts, nothing you'd notice if you weren't looking. 9,000 here, 8,000 there, always under the $10,000 reporting threshold." "Where's it going?" "Offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Derek set it up for her. Apparently, he has experience helping clients hide assets." I scrolled through months of transactions I'd never paid attention to. ATM withdrawals, wire transfers, payments to companies I'd never heard of, all authorized with my wife's digital signature. "There's more," Lyra said. "She took out a home equity line of credit 3 months ago, forged your signature on the paperwork. That's fraud." "Yes, it is. But proving it means admitting you never pay attention to your own financial accounts. Derek's counting on you being too embarrassed to pursue it." The waitress brought Lyra's second martini. I was still nursing my first beer, trying to process the scope of what my wife had done. "Why are you helping me now?" I asked. "Because this morning Sienna called me and said the plan had changed. She's filing for divorce immediately, claiming you've been emotionally abusive. She's going to take the house, half your retirement, and alimony. And she told me to find somewhere else to live because she's moving Derek in. So this is revenge. This is justice. There's a difference." Lyra leaned forward. "Sienna destroyed my marriage to protect her affair. She stole your money to fund her new life. She's about to destroy your reputation with false abuse claims. Someone needs to stop her." I closed the envelope and looked at Lyra. Really looked. Her makeup was perfect, but I could see the exhaustion underneath. The stress lines around her eyes. The way her hands shook slightly when she lifted her glass. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to fight back. I want you to make her face consequences for once in her privileged life." Lyra's voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce. "And I want to watch when it all falls apart. I'm not a vengeful person. Maybe it's time to learn." My phone buzzed with a text message from Sienna. "Staying at my mother's tonight. We'll talk tomorrow about logistics." I showed the message to Lyra. "She's not at her mother's," Lyra said. "She's at Derek's apartment on Harbor View, Unit 2847. They're probably celebrating right now." I finished my beer and stood up. "Thank you for this information. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to go home and think." "Elliot." Lyra caught my arm as I started to leave. "She's counting on you being passive. She's counting on you rolling over and letting her win. Don't give her the satisfaction." I drove home through streets that looked different now. The same route I'd taken thousands of times, but everything felt foreign, like I was seeing my own life from the outside. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Sienna's car was gone. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, looking at the windows of the home we'd bought together 7 years ago. We'd been so excited about the mortgage approval, the move-in date, the plans we'd made for renovations that never happened. Inside, the silence was overwhelming. I walked through rooms that suddenly felt like a museum of a marriage that had ended without my knowledge. Photos on the mantel showed us at various stages of happiness that now seemed performed. Fake smiles for fake memories. I went to my workshop in the basement, the one room in the house that was entirely mine. My computer setup, my tools, my projects that Sienna had always dismissed as hobbies. I powered up my laptop and started going through the evidence Lyra had given me. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Every business trip Sienna had taken in the past 18 months corresponded with Derek's travel schedule. Every late night at the office matched his calendar. Every book club meeting happened on nights when I was working overtime or out of town. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. Love affairs generate data, and data leaves traces. Phone records, credit card statements, GPS logs, social media check-ins, all the digital breadcrumbs of a double life. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sienna. "I've contacted a lawyer. You should do the same." I set the phone aside and kept working. By 3 a.m., I had a complete timeline of my wife's affair. Dates, locations, expenses, communications. 18 months of deception laid out in spreadsheets and documents. But information was just the beginning. Lyra was right about one thing. Sienna was counting on me being passive. She'd built her entire strategy around the assumption that I would accept her narrative and quietly disappear. Time to prove her wrong. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to downtown Seattle. Sienna's law firm occupied 3 floors of a glass tower with a view of Elliott Bay. I'd been there twice before, for company parties where I'd stood around making small talk with lawyers who barely acknowledged my existence. I parked across the street and waited. At 8:23 a.m., Derek Vaughn's silver Tesla pulled into the executive parking garage. At 8:47 a.m., Sienna's BMW followed. They arrived separately, but they were coordinating, probably texting each other about timing, making sure they weren't seen together, still maintaining the illusion of professionalism. I gave them an hour to get settled. Then I walked into the building's lobby. "Elliot Mercer, to see Derek Vaughn," I told the receptionist. "I'm a potential client." She made a call, and 5 minutes later, Derek appeared. He was exactly what I'd expected from the photos: tall, athletic, expensive suit, the kind of confident smile that came from never being told no. "Mr. Mercer, I understand you're interested in our corporate services?" "Actually, I'm interested in discussing my wife." His smile faltered for just a moment. "I'm sorry?" "Sienna Mercer, I believe you know her quite well." Derek's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, calculation, and finally, a return to professional composure. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," he said. "Perhaps we should speak in my office." "I think we should." His office was on the 23rd floor, all glass and chrome and expensive furniture, the kind of place designed to intimidate clients into paying higher fees. Derek closed the door and gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Mr. Mercer, I'm not sure what you think you know. I know you've been sleeping with my wife for 18 months. I know you helped her set up offshore accounts to hide marital assets. I know you've been using your legal expertise to help her commit fraud." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Lyra's photos. "I know you have a birthmark on your left shoulder that looks like Texas." Derek sat down heavily in his chair. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that this ends now." "Or what? You'll go to the police? File a complaint with the Bar Association?" Derek leaned back, some of his confidence returning. "Good luck proving any of that." "I don't need to prove anything to the police. I just need to prove it to your wife." That got his attention. "My wife?" "Jennifer Vaughn. Married 15 years, 2 kids, lives in that nice house in Bellevue, the one with the security cameras that probably show you coming home at very interesting hours." Derek's face went pale. "You can't." "I can. I will. Unless you convince Sienna to return every penny she's stolen and agree to a fair divorce settlement." "You're threatening me." "I'm offering you a choice. Clean up this mess voluntarily, or I'll clean it up for you. Either way, it ends." Derek stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the city below. "Sienna said you were passive, a pushover." "Sienna says a lot of things. Most of them are lies." He turned back to me. "What makes you think I have any control over what she does?" "Because you're the one with the legal knowledge. You're the one who set up the financial arrangements. You're the architect of this whole scheme." I stood up. "Which makes you responsible for fixing it." "And if I refuse?" I pulled out a manila envelope and set it on his desk. "Then your wife gets a copy of everything. Your law partners get a copy. The State Bar Association gets a copy. And I post the highlights on social media with appropriate tags." Derek opened the envelope and flipped through the contents. Hotel receipts with his credit card number, photos of him and Sienna in various states of undress, text messages discussing the offshore accounts. "How did you get these?" "Does it matter?" He closed the envelope and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You're not what I expected." "Neither is my wife, apparently. What exactly do you want?" "All stolen money returned to our joint accounts within 48 hours. Sienna agrees to a 50-50 split of legitimate marital assets. No alimony, no false abuse claims, no character assassination." I headed for the door. "And you stay away from my wife until the divorce is finalized." And in return, your wife never finds out that you're a cheating fraud who's been stealing from your clients' escrow accounts to fund hotel rooms. Derek's face went white. How did you... I'm very good with numbers, Derek. Your expense reports don't match your billable hours. Your client trust account has some interesting discrepancies. I'm sure it all balances out in the end, but the timing is fascinating. I left him standing there and took the elevator down to Sienna's floor. Her assistant, a young woman named Kelly, looked up nervously as I approached. Is Sienna available? I'm her husband. She's in a meeting. No, I'm not. Sienna's voice came from behind me. She was standing in the hallway, arms crossed, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. We need to talk, I said. I thought we said everything we needed to say yesterday. That was before I found out about the offshore accounts. Her composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Conference room, now. Unless you want to have this conversation in front of your colleagues. She led me to a small conference room with glass walls. Anyone walking by could see us, but they couldn't hear what we were saying. Derek told me about your visit, she said as soon as the door closed. I figured he would. Did he also tell you about my offer? Your threats, you mean. Call them what you want. The terms remain the same. Sienna sat down across from me, and for a moment I saw a flash of the woman I'd married. Vulnerable, uncertain, almost frightened. Then the mask slipped back into place. You can't prove any of this, she said. I can prove enough. Bank records, phone logs, credit card statements. Lyra kept very detailed records of her assistants. Lyra. Sienna's voice was flat with contempt. I should have known she'd turn on me. She didn't turn on you. You threw her away when she became inconvenient. What do you want, Elliot? I want my money back. I want a fair divorce. I want you to stop pretending to be a victim. And if I refuse? I pulled out my phone and showed her a social media post I'd prepared but not yet published. It contained a selection of photos and documents, along with a detailed explanation of her affair and financial fraud. Then everyone you know gets to see who you really are. She stared at the phone screen. You wouldn't. Try me. We sat in silence for several minutes. Through the glass walls, I could see her colleagues going about their daily business, completely unaware that one of their partners was about to have her life implode. You've changed, she said finally. No, I just stopped pretending that being nice would make you treat me with respect. I never meant for it to go this far. Yes, you did. You planned every step of this. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught. Sienna looked out the window at the city below. What happens after the divorce? You and Derek live happily ever after, I suppose. Just not with my money. What about us? What about 18 years? What about them? You threw them away the first time you got into bed with Derek. She was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and tired. I'll need time to move the money back. You have 48 hours. And the other conditions? Non-negotiable. She nodded slowly. I'll call my lawyer and have him draft a new settlement proposal. Good. I stood up to leave, then stopped. One more thing. What? I want you out of the house by Friday. Find somewhere else to live while we sort out the paperwork. That's my house too. Not anymore. I left her sitting in the conference room and walked back to the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of Derek standing in his office doorway, watching me leave. He looked like a man who'd just realized that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. The drive home took 45 minutes through Seattle traffic. I spent the time thinking about the conversation, analyzing what I'd seen in Sienna's face, trying to determine whether she would actually follow through on the agreement or if this was just another manipulation. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd decided it didn't matter. I'd given her a choice, and now I would wait to see what she chose. But either way, I was done being the victim in my own life. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyra. How did it go? Phase 1 complete, I typed back. Now we wait and see if they're smart enough to take the deal. And if they're not? I looked at my house, my neighborhood, my life that had been built on 18 years of what I'd thought was mutual respect and partnership. All of it contaminated now by the knowledge of how little I'd actually mattered to the person who was supposed to matter most. Then we moved to phase 2. 47 hours later, I checked our joint bank account. The balance was exactly what it had been 3 months ago, before Sienna's systematic theft began. She'd kept her word about returning the money, but keeping her word about leaving the house was apparently more difficult. I came home from work on Friday evening to find her car in the driveway and lights on in every room. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, cooking dinner like nothing had happened. "I thought you were moving out today," I said. "I changed my mind." She didn't look up from the stove. "This is my house too. I have a right to be here." "That's not what we agreed." "We agreed to a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're all going to happen." I set my laptop bag on the counter and studied her. She was wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, and she'd done her hair the way she used to when we were dating. The whole scene felt like performance art. "What are you doing, Sienna?" "Making dinner. Thought we could talk about working things out." "Working what out?" "Our marriage, our future. Maybe we were too hasty about the divorce." I laughed, which seemed to surprise her. "You want to work things out?" "People make mistakes. Couples get through affairs all the time. Is that what this was? A mistake?" "It was a moment of weakness that got out of hand. But it's over now. Derek and I aren't seeing each other anymore." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo I'd taken an hour earlier in the parking garage of Derek's apartment building. His Tesla was there, along with a familiar BMW. "That's your car, isn't it?" Her composure slipped. "I was returning some things he'd given me." "What kind of things?" "Jewelry, books, personal items." "In his bedroom." "How would you know where—" She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. "I've been watching you, Sienna, following you, documenting everything." I put my phone away. "Did you really think you could lie your way out of this?" She turned off the stove and faced me. "What do you want me to say?" "I want you to pack your things and leave, like we agreed." "And if I refuse?" "Then I make some phone calls." "To who?" "To Derek's wife, for starters. To your boss. To your mother. To everyone who thinks you're a respectable woman who would never cheat on her husband." Sienna's face went through several expressions: anger, fear, calculation, and finally, resignation. "You're really going to destroy my life over this?" "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to help you keep lying." She was quiet for a long time, staring at the dinner she'd been preparing. Chicken parmesan, my favorite meal, the same thing she'd made for my birthday every year since we'd been married. "I need time to find a place," she said finally. "You've had a week. A decent place, somewhere appropriate. You can stay with Derek. I'm sure he has room. His lease doesn't allow overnight guests. That's not my problem." She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You've become very cold." "I've become realistic. This isn't you, Elliot. You're not a cruel person." "You're right. I'm not cruel, but I'm not stupid either, and I'm tired of pretending to be." My phone rang. The caller ID showed Lyra's number. "Excuse me," I said to Sienna and answered the call. "We have a problem," Lyra said without preamble. "What kind of problem?" "Derek's been asking questions about me, about how I got access to their communications. I think he's planning something." "What kind of something?" "I don't know, but he called my ex-husband this morning, asked about my mental health history, my stability, my credibility as a witness." I looked at Sienna, who was obviously listening to my side of the conversation. "Where are you now?" "At home, but I think someone was watching my apartment earlier." Pack a bag, go stay with a friend for a few days. I can't. I have my daughter this weekend. Then take her with you. Elliot, what's going on? Sienna asked as soon as I hung up. Your boyfriend is trying to intimidate witnesses. Derek wouldn't do that. Derek is a lawyer who's facing professional ruin and a very expensive divorce. He'll do whatever he thinks is necessary to protect himself. You don't know him. I know he's desperate, and desperate people make dangerous choices. Sienna was quiet for a moment. What if I could convince him to leave town? Take a job somewhere else, start over? What if you could convince yourself to stop lying? I'm trying to fix this. No, you're trying to manage it. There's a difference. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop interfering in things you don't understand, or you'll regret it. I showed the message to Sienna. Is this your idea of fixing things? Her face went pale. That's not from me. But it's from Derek. I don't know, maybe. He's been under a lot of stress. Stress. I repeated the word, tasting it. He's been under stress. His wife is asking questions. His partners are starting to notice irregularities in his accounts. He's not thinking clearly. None of that is my fault. Isn't it? You're the one who started this whole thing. I stared at her. I started it? You could have just filed for divorce quietly, handled it like adults. Instead, you had to make it into some kind of war. I didn't make it into anything. I just refused to be the victim. And now everyone's going to suffer because of your pride. Everyone's going to suffer because you and Derek made choices that have consequences. Another text came in. Last warning. I saved the number and forwarded the messages to Lyra. Evidence, I typed. Sienna was watching me with something that might have been fear. What are you going to do? I'm going to protect myself and the people who helped me. What are you going to do? I don't know. Then figure it out. Because this situation is about to get much worse, and you need to decide which side you're on. She looked around the kitchen, at the dinner she'd made, at the home we'd shared for 7 years. I never wanted it to be like this. But it is like this. And wanting it to be different doesn't change anything. What if Derek does something stupid? Then Derek will face the consequences of doing something stupid. And what about me? What about you? Am I safe? I looked at her for a long moment. Even after everything she'd done, everything she'd stolen and lied about, she was still thinking primarily about herself. I don't know, I said finally. Are you? She didn't answer, and I didn't wait for her to. I went upstairs to pack a bag of my own. If Derek was escalating to threats, then staying in the house wasn't safe for either of us. But unlike Sienna, I wasn't going to run away from the problem. I was going to meet it head on. Time to move to Phase 2. I spent the weekend at Fiona's apartment, monitoring Derek's movements through social media and the building security cameras I'd gained access to through some creative IT work. He was getting sloppy, posting location tags and photos that made it easy to track his schedule. On Monday morning, I called in another sick day and drove to Harborview Towers. Derek's building was one of those luxury complexes that catered to young professionals who wanted to live downtown but couldn't afford houses. Lots of glass, lots of chrome, lots of security cameras that were more for show than actual protection. I waited in the parking garage until Derek left for work, then I made my way to the 28th floor. Unit 2847 had a smart lock, which meant it was vulnerable to the same kind of digital manipulation that I dealt with every day at work. It took me less than 10 minutes to bypass the security and get inside. Derek's apartment was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, expensive electronics, expensive art that probably came from a catalog. The kind of place that looked impressive but had no personality. I wasn't there to steal anything or cause damage. I was there to gather information. Derek's home office contained 3 filing cabinets and a desktop computer that he'd left logged in. Apparently, security wasn't as important to him as convenience. The files were a treasure trove of information. Client accounts, billing records, expense reports, and most importantly, communications with other lawyers about asset protection strategies. Derek hadn't just been helping Sienna hide money, he'd been doing it for other clients as well. I photographed everything relevant and uploaded the images to a secure cloud account. Then I planted a small recording device behind his computer monitor and left everything exactly as I'd found it. The trip back to the parking garage took 5 minutes. The drive to Sienna's office took 20. I called her from the lobby. "Come down here, we need to talk." "I'm in meetings all day." "Cancel them. This is important." She appeared 10 minutes later, looking harried and nervous. "What's so urgent?" "Get in my truck." "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Then we'll have this conversation right here in front of your colleagues." She got in the truck. I drove to a public park a few blocks away and parked under a tree that would provide some privacy. Then I showed her the photos I'd taken from Derek's office. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "Evidence that Derek has been running a money laundering operation through his law practice. Client funds, escrow accounts, offshore transfers, it's all here." Her face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it? How do you think he knew how to set up your offshore accounts? How do you think he had access to the kind of cash you've been spending?" "He said it was his money. Savings from his practice. Derek makes $200,000 a year and drives a $90,000 car. He lives in a $3,000 a month apartment and spends more than that on clothes. Where exactly did you think his savings were coming from?" She stared at the photos, her hands shaking slightly. "What does this mean?" "It means Derek is going to prison, and it means anyone who helped him move money is going to be considered an accomplice." "I didn't know." "That's not going to matter to the FBI." "The FBI? Money laundering is a federal crime, Sienna, especially when it involves amounts this large." She was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at families playing in the park. Normal people living normal lives without federal investigations hanging over their heads. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to cooperate with the investigation that's about to begin." "What investigation?" I pulled out my phone and showed her an email I'd sent that morning to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. "The one that started when I reported Derek's activities." "You turned him in?" "I turned in a criminal who was using my wife to help him steal from his clients. But that means you're going to be questioned, extensively, about your relationship with Derek, about the money transfers, about everything you know regarding his business practices." Sienna put her head in her hands. "This is going to destroy my career. Only if you refuse to cooperate." "What do you mean?" "The FBI is more interested in Derek than they are in you. You were a tool he used, not a partner in his operation. If you help them build their case, they might be willing to offer you immunity." "And if I don't?" "Then you go down with him." She looked up at me. "Why are you helping me?" "I'm not helping you. I'm giving you a choice. The same choice I gave Derek last week." "Which is? Clean up this mess or let it destroy you." My phone buzzed with a text from Lyra. "Derek just left work early, driving toward your neighborhood." I showed the message to Sienna. "He's probably going to the house to look for evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Anything that connects him to the money laundering, anything that proves you knew what was happening." "But I didn't know." "Then you don't have anything to worry about." Another text from Lyra. "He's at your house. Looks like he's trying to get inside." I started the truck. "We need to go." "Where?" "To stop Derek from doing something that will make this situation worse for everyone." The drive to my neighborhood took 15 minutes through afternoon traffic. Derek's Tesla was parked in my driveway, and the front door of the house was standing open. "Stay in the truck," I told Sienna. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to have a conversation with Derek about property rights and breaking and entering." I found him in my home office, going through filing cabinets and desk drawers. He looked up when I walked in, and his face was a mask of desperation and rage. "Where is it?" he demanded. "Where is what?" "The evidence you stole from my apartment." "I didn't steal anything from your apartment." "Then how did you know about the client accounts?" "I'm very good with computers, Derek. I'm very good at finding information that people think they've hidden." He stood up, and I noticed that his hands were shaking. "You're going to destroy both of us. I'm going to destroy a criminal who was using my wife to help him steal money." Sienna knew exactly what was happening. She wasn't some innocent victim. "Prove it." "I can prove it. I have recordings of our conversations. I have emails where she suggested ways to move money more efficiently." "Then you should probably turn those over to the FBI. Or I could just make all of this go away." "How?" Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. I raised my hand slowly. "That's not going to solve your problems. It'll solve my immediate problem." "Which is?" "You. Shooting me isn't going to make the FBI investigation disappear. It's just going to add murder charges to your money laundering charges." "Maybe, but it'll buy me time to get out of the country." "With what money? The FBI has probably already frozen your accounts." His face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that federal investigators don't wait around when someone reports financial crimes. They act fast to prevent suspects from moving assets or fleeing." Derek pulled out his phone and tried to access his banking app. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely type. "No signal," he said. "That's because I'm jamming your phone, along with any other electronic devices in this house." "You can't do that." "I can do that. I did do that. It's amazing what you can accomplish with the right equipment and a basic understanding of radio frequencies." Derek looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. "You planned this." "I planned for various contingencies. This was one of them." "You knew I'd come here. I knew you'd panic when you realized the scope of what you were facing. Panicked people make predictable choices. So what happens now?" "Now you put the gun down, and we wait for the FBI to arrive. I'm not going to prison." "Yes, you are. The only question is whether you're going for money laundering or money laundering plus murder." Derek looked at the gun in his hand like he was surprised to find it there. "This wasn't supposed to happen." "No, it wasn't. You were supposed to steal money quietly and never get caught. But you got greedy and you got sloppy, and you involved people who were smarter than you gave them credit for." "Sienna said you were weak." "Sienna says a lot of things. Most of them are wrong." The sound of car doors slamming came from outside. Derek looked toward the window, then back at me. "FBI," I said. "Right on schedule." He set the gun on the desk and sat down heavily in my chair. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the moment I found out about the affair." "All of it? The confrontation at my office, the threats, the evidence gathering?" "All of it." "Why?" I looked at him sitting in my chair, in my office, in my house, holding a weapon he'd intended to use to end my life so he could avoid facing the consequences of his own choices. "Because you thought you could destroy my life and walk away clean. Because you thought I was too weak to fight back. Because you were wrong." The front door opened, and voices filled the house. Professional voices, calm and authoritative. "FBI, anyone in the house needs to identify themselves immediately." "In here," I called out. "One suspect, one victim, situation under control." Derek looked at me one last time. "I hope it was worth it." It was. The agents who entered the room were exactly what I'd expected. Professional, efficient, completely unimpressed by Derek's expensive suit or my suburban home office. They secured the weapon, read Derek his rights, and began the process of turning my life into evidence. Through the window, I could see Sienna talking to another agent by my truck. She looked small and frightened and very alone. I felt nothing watching her. No satisfaction, no regret, no anger. Just the quiet completion of a job that had needed to be done. The last laugh, as it turned out, was mine. And it was very loud indeed. 3 months later, I signed the final divorce papers in a lawyer's office that smelled like coffee and leather. Sienna wasn't there. She'd moved back to Portland to live with her sister while the FBI investigation continued. Derek had pled guilty to money laundering and attempted murder. He was looking at 15 years in federal prison. His wife had taken their children and moved back to her parents' house in California. Lyra had testified before the grand jury and received immunity in exchange for her cooperation. She'd moved to Denver with her daughter and started working for a nonprofit that helped women escape abusive relationships. I kept the house. Sienna kept her car and her retirement account. Everything else was split down the middle, just like I'd originally proposed. The neighborhood was quiet again. Mr. Greaves still watched everything from his front porch. The coffee shop on the corner still made terrible espresso. Life had returned to normal, except for the part where I was living it alone. I didn't mind the solitude. After 18 years of marriage to someone who'd been lying to me for the last 18 months, being alone felt like honesty. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about Derek's sentencing. Hope you're doing well. L. Lyra. I'd been wondering when I'd hear from her. Doing fine, I typed back. Hope Denver is treating you well. It is. Clean slate feels good. Yes, it does. Any regrets? I thought about the question for a long time. Did I regret discovering Sienna's affair? Did I regret fighting back? Did I regret the destruction that had followed? No, I typed. You? Only that it took so long. I put my phone away and looked around my empty house. Tomorrow, I would start the process of making it feel like home again. New furniture, new paint, new memories that belonged only to me. But tonight, I was content to sit in the silence and appreciate the sound of a life that was finally, completely honest. The last laugh had been mine,